Hey everyone, so today's video will be a continuation of the midbrain, but before we get into that, let's quickly review what we went over last time regarding the brain and its functioning, and that's part of the lobes of the brain. So here you can see, and I know it's backwards because there's no mirroring effect in our video, but here you can see an F, and that means the front, so that, just think forehead, and then you have a B, which means back, okay, the back of your head. So when we start off with this, on the front side of our brain, right here, we have the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is actually where we get a lot of our creative thought, we get problem solving, our intellect comes from there, our judgment. So if you ever see a person in their teens or even their early 20s not making the best judgment possible, it could be because that part of the brain doesn't really develop until the early 20s. So it's not fully developed until that point. Behavior and personality also come from this area as well. If we move back a little bit to right here, which is pretty much in the top center of your head, that is the parietal lobe, and this area is responsible for like reading and some language as well as some senses also. Moving backwards here, we have the occipital lobe, and that is responsible for vision, or helps us with vision. Basically, when we see things, we see an image. It rolls through our brain, gets to the back of our brain, and then that's where that image is actually interpreted. So you could say, we don't see with our eyes, we see with our mind. Okay, corny. Sorry, moving forward. So the bottom piece right here, the cerebellum, that part is for balance and posture, and basically it allows us to stand up straight, have balance while we walk, while we do different things, and basically so we don't fall over and we're a stumbling mess. That's what that part is for. Now, let's move on to what we have going on currently. That is all this other stuff. So real quick, let me just get rid of this blue line, these lines here, and we're going to focus on the remainder of the information here. The first thing we're going to look at is this section right here, the midbrain, which is right in that region. The midbrain is actually extremely important, and the reason it's important is because this is where we have a lot of visual, auditory, and motor information being processed. So it's not really in the brain, it's really right in that region. Digestion, heart rate, breathing rate, all of these things are kind of regulated or controlled in that region called the midbrain. And we call it a midbrain because it falls in between the brain section and the brain stem. It's the middle part, basically. So midbrain, pretty easy term to remember. The next thing we're going to look at is this area right here, known as the pons. I know it's like pond without the D, P-O-N-S, and I apologize for my kindergarten-like writing. It's atrocious, I know. The pons is also helpful in regulating breathing, as well as deep sleep, hearing, taste, as well as balance. So another part that helps with balance, as well as some other very, very important items. Moving to the bottom of the brainstem here, you have the medulla oblongata, as it is otherwise known as, and this actually controls some very important functions as well. Heart rate is one of them. Blood pressure is another one of them. So if you're ever feeling stressed and your heart rate begins to spike, your blood pressure goes up, hey, this might have something to do with it. Of course, diet and all that other stuff comes into play as well, but that medulla is working at that point. Another thing that can happen here is some involuntary functions. Sneezing, coughing, vomiting, things like that. So if you ever develop a cough for some reason, this is probably activated. Not that it's not activated normally, but it's activating more so and trying to cough and expel whatever is making you cough or make you vomit for whatever reason may be there as well. Sneezing, if you get some irritant in your nose, that guy wants to kind of kick that out. So the medulla is pretty important. Then we go up to this area right here. This is known as the pituitary, a tiny little gland about the size of a pea. And when you see it on the brain, it kind of looks like, think of like the cherry on the end of a stem. It's a small component, has a tiny little stem to it, but it's actually a power-packed little thing, the power-packed pituitary, if you will. The one thing the pituitary does is it helps us with stress or response to stress. How well do you respond to stress? Me, it's so-so. It depends on the situation, and of course it always depends on the situation. But the pituitary helps us with those responses, which is extremely important. This little tiny gland, again about the size of a pea, helps to control other glands in the body that are actually bigger than itself for some of them. Another thing that it can do is that little tiny gland helps promote bone and muscle growth. A pretty important feature there. So the pituitary is actually super, super important. Moving on, we have the hypothalamus here, and you can see where that is pointing to, kind of in this general region just above or in the area of the midbrain. And the thing that the hypothalamus does, it does several things. It helps us deal with emotions, and it also helps us deal with body temperature. One of the things that that I like to actually associate it with is body temperature. Sorry for going off camera there for a second. One of the things it does is body temperature, and the way it does it is, think about a thermostat in the home, or however you regulate the heat in your home. Typically there's something mounted to the wall and you adjust the temperature to either warmer or cooler depending on your liking. Well, the hypothalamus actually works kind of the same way. As blood passes through the hypothalamus, it picks up on the temperature of the blood. Is it too cold? Is it too hot? What's going on there? Do we need to cool down, or do we need to warm up, kind of thing? So if you get too cold, the hypothalamus reads that, regulates the body, and tries to warm you up or give you signals that you need to warm up. If it's too hot, the opposite obviously happens and gives you warning signs that you need to cool down. So the hypothalamus is actually extremely important. Excuse me. So the other things that it helps with, as I mentioned, are emotions. Emotions is definitely one of the things. Sleep. Sleep is another thing. Thirst, as well as hunger. So when those items are taking place, or whenever you feel extremely thirsty, hungry, or whatever the case may be, the hypothalamus is going to be partially responsible for that. So real quick, short video, I know it. Went over a lot, went over what each part of the brain, the lobes, mean. There's other lobes as well that I didn't mention, the temporal lobe. Okay, you have language and hearing in there, and that sits basically right behind your ears in your temporal region. And then we went into the midbrain section right in here. We discussed the brain stem very quickly, as well as the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Now, there are a ton of other pieces to the brain for sure, and it could actually get extremely complicated. I'm giving you surface level basic information, the gross anatomy, no pun intended there, no puns intended. So I'm giving you kind of the gross anatomy, the big picture stuff here, to really kind of go over what the brain is all about and how it functions. So with that, let's check out the lesson below. I'll give you some review tips about the midbrain and the brain stem, and we'll get into some other things. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. Check out my resource page. Well, you should be on it by now, but look there for any other details regarding the brain. And again, you can reach out to me in the VO, by email, by phone, or send me a quick, I said email already, so never mind. So just contact me. All right. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.